You were pointing out, Dan, that the Wall Street Journal has just released an editorial by Brett Kavanaugh, and he says, I'm an independent jurist, independent judge. And he also, at the top of it, in italics, says, when I spoke in that hearing, and he's been criticized for being too emotive and too angry, I spoke as a father, I spoke as a dad, I spoke as a son.
Yeah, that's right. The article by Brett Kavanaugh is on the Wall Street Journal's website right now. It will be in tomorrow's paper. And essentially it is, again, another defense of his temperament. He said, look, when I spoke to those Democrats, I was protecting my family, my name, and my reputation in public life. And probably, he said, I said a few things that maybe I should not have. But he says, I'm making it clear, I believe in the rule of law, I'm an impartial judge, have always been an impartial judge on the appellate court, and will continue to be so if confirmed to the Supreme Court.
I mean, you can see where he's coming from here, because he's already facing opposition from some people who say that the things that he said in that hearing with regard to President Trump, and, you know, this is all just payback from the Clintons, that it might urge some people to say that he has to remove himself, recuse himself from certain cases, Mary.
But, you know, this is just proof that really they just want to get rid of him no matter what. And so they tried to get rid of him through these a personal smear. It didn't work. So now they've moved to another, battleground, which is to say, well, forget about all that. It's his temperament that's wrong. And, you know, I mean, I thought that actually seeing that human side of him was comforting to me, because if he had gone up there and been very robotic and unemotional, I think that might have been even more damaging to him than what he did. You can say that maybe he shouldn't have had the exchange he had with Senator Klobuchar. That's probably true, but
which he came back and apologized for,
He apologized, and, you know, a lot of those senators who were questioning him also owe him an apology, because, as Bill says, I mean, there's absolutely no evidence for these charges. That would make anyone furious.
You know, this isn't going to end. We saw the protesters in Washington, so even if he does secure his seat on the Supreme Court as a justice, I mean, I'm imagining that the day he has his first day in court, those steps are probably going to be flooded with protesters. I think this will be very invigorating in some ways to Democrats.
I think it is, but I think it's been invigorating to Republicans, you know, just from my informal, non-political contacts of what people say, especially the moms who have sons, and just see the unfairness. I think Mary makes a good point. There are a lot of people that owe Brett Kavanaugh an apology for their behavior, the way they throw around unsubstantiated charges. And there's nothing too crazy to throw up on the air or print or something to say about this guy. And I'd like to know, look, when he gave that speech, I wanted to stand up and cheer, because I know him, I know his wife, I know his kids, and I thought he defended himself ably. And I would like to know, if that's not right, what is the proper comportment for a man accused of gang rape with no evidence?
It's hard to,
right.
I mean, it's a pretty tough bar, right?
Right.
You know, in terms of what Bill touches on, Dan, how the press has handled this, because the press has been criticized for having a pretty low bar for what could be printed. You know, you've got letters from friends. You've got this woman who says, you know, I saw him stand near the punch. I mean, incredible.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they keep repeating in every story written that the details of the accusations against Brett Kavanaugh, which has an effect after a while. People begin to think, well, maybe there's something here. And it was for that reason that, as Bill suggests, he had to stand up and defend himself if nobody in the press was going to do it for him. And I think that's essentially, in large part, why President Trump does many of the things he does. He feels he's got to defend himself because there'll be no support whatsoever in the press.
I wonder what it says about the Me Too movement, because we haven't seen, really, a man who sort of fought back and won. And if he does get past this process, and, you know, keeping in mind that these are not corroborated allegations, but basically insinuation has been accusation, has been indictment in these cases. Quick thought on that.
Well, we've seen some of that. I mean, we had the Duke lacrosse, you know, the truth finally came out there. But I think it remains the same going forward.
Thank you very much. Good to have all of you with us.